Hello and welcome to The Hub on CGTN. I'm Wang Guan in Beijing. This year marks 70 years of People's Republic of China's diplomatic engagement with Africa. At this milestone, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi recently concluded his first overseas trip of the year to Africa, honoring China's long-held tradition, also highlighting the growing strategic importance of China-Africa relations amid global uncertainty. Against this backdrop, a senior delegation from Ghana has visited China, signaling a renewed focus on deepening bilateral cooperation. What are the main agenda items and key highlights of this visit? What new opportunities are emerging for China-Ghana collaboration? To explore all these questions and more, we're joined by a distinguished guest from Ghana, Mr. Augustus Tanoh, Presidential Advisor and head of the 24-Hour Economy Secretariat. Mr. Tanoh, so good to see you. Welcome to Beijing, China, and welcome to CGTN.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.
This is a very important delegation, visiting several Chinese cities as well as Chinese institutions, and this comes on the heel of a very important strategic and presidential summit between President Xi and President Mahama. What do you hope to achieve through this delegation and their visits and exchanges with their Chinese counterparts?
You know, when the President Mahama met President Xi Jinping in October, one of the outcomes was the fact that China would give important support in terms of Ghana's infrastructure development, industrialization, green development, and also supporting through investment tie-ups, the 24-hour economy program in Ghana. So this is a follow-through to those understandings reached in October when the two presidents met last year.
And specifically, can you tell us about the outcomes you're expecting to achieve, projects, deliverables?
Yes, the 24-hour program in Ghana is Ghana's national program for transformation, enhanced productivity, and also inclusive growth. It is entirely designed to restructure Ghana's economy, make it more industrialized, make its agriculture more modern, and also achieve very strong supply chain and markets efficiency in a context where we're able then to create employment by creating more growth and more development. We seek China as a partner, and many Chinese companies have approached the 24-hour Secretariat with an interest to invest in various elements of the program. We have various elements: Grow 24, which is the agricultural component, crop production component. We have Make 24, which is the manufacturing component. And we have Connect 24, which is the supply chain and market efficiency component. And a lot of what is going to happen is going to be along the Volta Economic Corridor, which has been declared as Ghana's first net zero green corridor. And there's a lot of interest to invest in the infrastructure, ports, inland waterways, floating assets, and also the agroecological and industrial parks that will be on both banks of the Volta going up. The corridor begins from Tema Port. Now, Tema Port is interesting because China, through the Belt and Road, was very much involved in the expansion of Tema Port. It's continuing, and the idea is that from the current 800,000 TEU per annum, after China's investment and through Ghana's cooperation, the TEU throughput will become about 3.7 million. So that's quite significant. And some of that is cargo destined to Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali. And hopefully through the railway line that has been established now to Akosobo Port along the Volta, we will then begin to use river transport as a main thoroughfare for moving goods to northern Ghana and to the Sahel, and develop strong economic activity along the lines, similar to China's own growth along the Yangtze and Yellow River.
What specific sectors and industries do you think present unique opportunities from Ghana to the Chinese investors? Because we have a lot of investor friends around us saying that they're interested in venture out to the Belt and Road countries, to Africa, and to Western African country of Ghana in particular, given China's size and its own economic transformation, emphasizing high-quality growth, grain growth. What are the opportunities?
First of all, Ghana imports a lot of food, almost $2.75 billion worth of food. If we're going to modernize agriculture, then it's absolute, and then also reduce food imports and achieve food self-sufficiency for both feeding human beings, animals, and providing raw material to industry, then we must at least begin to produce the limited basic equipment that allows us to be more efficient in developing and growing crops and also more efficient in the first stage processing of these crops. And of course, machinery, equipment, machinery, component manufacture, and automotive parts is very key in this process. And one of the things that we've been approached by a lot of Chinese companies is to invest in the Kumasi Machinery and Technology Park, which basically will then become a major hub for project design, for development, and also for commercial execution of some of these important machinery that basically is very simple, publicly available technology that can then be applied to assist Ghana in its industrialization advance. Ghana has historically been a gateway to the 425 million people who occupy the region of West Africa, particularly in the ECOWAS marketplace. Since President Mahama's arrival in office, Ghana's inflation rate has dropped from 54% to last month's figures, year on year, to 5.4%. Interest rates have dropped from 27% to 11% and are still going down. The exchange rate has stabilized and in some cases has appreciated against major currencies. And so the macro stability then provides the kind of incentive for those who want to invest to come into a stable macro environment, a stable political environment, and also a land with great opportunities. The Volta Economic Corridor has about 2 million hectares of land available, arable land, for crop production, and of course out of that for industrial processing, and also tremendous potential for renewable energy, particularly solar. And so that mix, that integration of value chains and that integration of infrastructure with production and also industrial outcomes is what I think is attracting many investors.
If you look at the history of Chinese engagement with Africa, it has mixed success, largely successful, I would say, but also not without its challenges. What are the things that Chinese businesses should pay attention to?
I think the earlier thrust into Africa was often without partners and without really knowledge of people on the ground who could guide that investment. We in the 24-hour economy basically have positioned ourselves to be co-developers with the Chinese incoming inbound investment so that we basically prepare the way, we assist in de-risking and mitigating whatever risk may be available, we prepare the permitting and approvals, and so that we create a seamless path to coming into Ghana investing. And from that experience, we develop the projects together, and at some point we exit, and the investor can continue.
You have the ears of the president. You're very close to President Mahama, been in politics for many years. If I ask you, Mr. Tanoh, to characterize the current state of China-Ghana relations, decades of engagement, what would you say?
Well, Ghana's relationship with China has been very strong. I think we're the second country to recognize China, and we're very instrumental in working with the African group to admit China into the United Nations, which was quite historic in the 70s. And we have been very consistent about a one China policy. Apart from that, we've had a lot of people-to-people exchange, and we've basically actualized the China-Africa year of people-to-people exchange as foundational in our economic and cultural relationship with China. Ghana is a big trading partner of China, and it's our intention also to ensure that that partnership not only grows, but stabilizes to the mutual benefit of both countries. In a world of uncertainty generated by certain powers, the foundational relationship between China and Africa is very critical to the South-South cooperation and very critical to global stability. And we find China's leadership in creating a sense of stability, a sense of predictability that allows small countries like Ghana to feel that they can be part of a rules-based international order, exemplary, welcome, and important to deepen.
You talk about the chaos that we face or find ourselves in when it comes to the geopolitical environment. How does Ghana position itself, given the fact it has a historical relationship with the West, if I'm not mistaken, with English being the first language of your esteemed country, and China coming along with as a reliable and trustworthy new partner, a very strong partner with great momentum. How do you find yourself balancing your relations between China and that of the West?
I think that we've always been non-aligned. We have never been in favor of polarized world, and we've always been in favor of a rule-based international system. Currently, we have some flux and some volatility. We hope it will pass, but our relationship with the West are long-standing. They're historical, they're cultural, and therefore cannot be abandoned easily. But at the same time, we have to recognize the importance of China's leadership in this period of turbulence as an anchor and an island of stability. And that is something that we cherish very deeply, not only as Ghanaians, but as Africans as well. We will continue to work and relate to the West. We have strong bonds of economic and social and cultural interests. And we hope that I believe, hope also that this turbulence will simmer down so that we can have the kinds of expectations of stable, predictable outcomes in international relations.
To actualize China's vision for a more orderly and a predictable, stable world economy and world geopolitics, President Xi proposed a series of global initiatives on security, development, civilizations, and also most recently at the SCO Summit on Global Governance Initiative. How do you see these initiatives holding potential for
I think it has
world?
wide support. And I think it comes at a very important and critical time where the world is feeling unbalanced. It's always important to have a voice that creates and exudes stability and confidence. And I believe these initiatives are worthwhile in the sense that they provide an anchor of hope and also an anchor of practical deeds that will make the outcomes more stable and beneficial. Particularly, you have to remember that Ghana, although it's a giant in Africa, is a small country. And of course, we value our independence. We value the predictable world order. And so the initiatives of President Xi are most welcome. And they also portend an important and potentially prosperous future if we're all willing to engage in diplomacy, willing to engage in mutual cooperation. China has taken the most important initiative of giving 53 African countries zero tariff access to its markets for about 98 to 100% of goods. This is important because what it does is that it provides an important opportunity for Africa and for Ghana to enter a huge market of great potential that also will pull up our economies and allow us also to diversify our destination of trade into Asia and into China. So these are important initiatives. They're all interlinked, and we appreciate President Xi's foresight and vision for a globally just and stable world.
Mr. Tanoh, I want to end on a lighter note as we're celebrating the Chinese Lunar New Year. You're traveling across China. What are the things that you think our friends in the West and around the world couldn't know until they come and visit this very country?
Well, China is very ordered, very organized, a very disciplined society with very warm and friendly people. And I believe that there's a thirst from China to know about the rest of the world, a curiosity, and also a thirst to engage and work in mutual development, whether it's private sector or public sector, to the benefit of both the host countries receiving the investment and to the benefit of the Chinese investor. Also, I think that the cultural exchanges that are going on between the young people, particularly student intake into Chinese universities, in particular the Beijing Language and Cultural University, and the kinds of Chinese language expertise they're gaining can only benefit future Ghana-China relations, and also, if it's widespread in Africa, future Africa and China relations. Don't forget that China is 1.4 billion people. Africa is 1.3 billion people and growing with the youngest population. Yes. It can only be a relationship if well nurtured, if deliberately developed, and if structured on mutual benefit. It can only be good for both China and Africa and very good for the rest of the world.
And finally, can I borrow your kindness and then deliver a Chinese New Year message to our viewers watching this program? If you don't mind, Mr. Tanoh, turning to the camera, because it's the biggest holiday in China where everyone and every household is celebrating. We're celebrating, by the way, the year of the horse, which embodies momentum, strength, and force.
So let me wish the wonderful Chinese people a very happy New Year of peace, prosperity, good health, strong mutual relationships, brotherly and sisterly friendship across the continent of Africa and into China and back. Thank you. And from Ghana as well. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Tanoh. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
As China-Ghana cooperation continues to expand under the Belt and Road Initiative with a growing emphasis on climate-resilient and sustainable infrastructure, we're also joined by Mr. Nana Bene, Chief Executive Officer of the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund. He will share insights into how these projects are supporting Ghana's long-term economic transformation and contributing to Africa's broader development. You're the CEO of Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund, that is a quasi-sovereign fund of Ghana. Can you tell us about the priorities that you hope to have during this China trip? What do you hope to achieve?
Well, under His Excellency President John Mahama's vision, he's looking for economic transformation. We believe very much that economic transformation starts with key infrastructure development. And so on this trip, we're looking for partners who we can share our investment ideas with and invite them to co-invest with us in some of these projects, particularly around the projects under the 24-hour economy. So we're hoping to be able to do that so that we can kickstart the program, which is meant to transform our economic development in the country.
What sectors and industries are you paying particular interest to this time around in China?
So we're looking very much at agric and agri-processing because we're very keen to develop import substitution for a lot of the agri products. At the moment, Ghana is heavily import-driven, and we believe that economic transformation should lead to self-sustenance in the country and also to increase our exports. We're looking at manufacturing in the areas of light manufacturing. So we want to set up industry parks to be able to start doing some of the manufacturing in the country in areas like machines and also like textiles. We're looking to sort of develop those sort of areas as well. We're also looking at renewable energy because as we develop all these industries, we require much more energy to do that as well. So that's also one of the key sort of areas. And finally, we have the Volta Lake, which is the world's largest man-made lake, which moves from the southern part of the country to the northern part of the country. And so it offers us a key corridor to create an economic sort of activity in there. There's about 8 million hectares of arable land around the lake, which we want to transform into commercial farms and sort of agro-processing hubs. And so the logistics to have that done is another area where we're looking for investors to participate in terms of ports building and ships, etc., and to have terminals which will be able to run the logistics effectively.
So, Mr. Bene, isn't this a perennial issue until now? That is the agricultural modernization bottlenecks. Because when we talk to President Museveni in Uganda, in President Ruto in Kenya, they all talk about the fact that, for example, coffee bean export, Ethiopia, Kenya, and Uganda combined for, they're making up the chunk of the coffee bean export to the world, but they're only retaining some, single-digit 4 or 5% of the profit. I mean, this is insane.
So for us in Ghana, what we actually want to do, what is actually driving this new vision under His Excellency President Mahama, is to be able to address these sort of bottlenecks in our industry. We are one of the world's largest producer of cocoa. But for most of the cocoa exports, they are in this primary state, and therefore there is a push to try and do more value adds to the cocoa before it sort of leaves, and that requires some sort of manufacturing capability in there as well. We are a gateway to most of the West African countries, especially the Sahel countries. There's about 400 million of population, if you think about them. So we believe that once we can be able to bring some of these hubs into Ghana, from partners like China, who have actually shown that expertise over the years, we will have a ready market to be able to do that from, and obviously enhance the fortunes of the country and of the sub-region.
When it comes to the digital sector, do you have any plans, and do His Excellency Mahama have any plans to leverage China's research and application capabilities when it comes to AI application, robotics, so on and so forth, to kickstart things?
Yes, Ghana has, as with most of Africa, have a very young population. The majority of the population is young and very, very talented. Ghana is also touted as one of the countries that has most skills when it comes to IT-related, sort of the IT-related industry. So yes, part of the plan is to ensure that we are growing that capability and spawning businesses in that sort of industry as well. There's some investment we've started to make in fiber optic technology and the data centers. We are inviting even more involvement in there. And there's a lot of push to train a lot of coding among the youth and to partner with some of these world organizations who are doing these things to set up these sort of businesses that are there. There's a lot of demand and a lot of interest in that space. So we believe that once we put the bulk infrastructure and the basic infrastructure there, it will draw in quite a number of youth to be able to take advantage of this.
From the introduction of your esteemed organization, one thing that really sticks out that is to build climate resilient infrastructure, sustainable infrastructure. Why is that so important to your government and to your organization?
Well, Ghana has spent some time looking into this climate resilient portfolio of the country. And it is estimated that if we do nothing about climate resilience, by the year 2050, we'll lose about 1.7% of our GDP in there as well. We've done a lot of work with the Global Center for Adaptation. They've been able to identify some of the key risk areas we have in terms of flood prevention, etc. We've identified 35 initiatives where we have to pay particular attention in terms of some of our hydro dams and even some of the roads that we're building at the moment. If nothing is done about keeping or having effective climate resilient strategies, what is going to happen is that the money we are spending in building the infrastructure, the capital that we're trying to build, will be eroded over time because you will build, and because of the things that are happening, they will be destroyed. And therefore, it is a key imperative to make sure we safeguard the capital investments we are making through these climate resilient strategies. And thankfully, we have a lot of help from a number of the global agencies to help us to make sure that we preserve the capital that we are putting into infrastructure.
How do you see China as a partner or even a reliable partner given the priorities of these areas that you've outlined?
I mean, with China's focus on especially the climate area, and in terms of areas like the renewable energy, etc., is very key for us. So in a country like Ghana, we are very ripe for renewable energy like solar. China has a lot of knowledge and expertise in there, and an appetite to invest in those sort of areas as well. So we see them as very likely partners in being able to invest in some of these technologies as well. There is also demand for the energy, because as the population grows and as the industries grow, we need more and more of these energies in there. So these are projects that are feasible and commercially viable. And because of the knowledge and expertise that has been built in China already, we see them as a likely partner where knowledge can be transferred, and together we should be able to create viable industries in the climate space.
If we zoom out a little bit and see this world, one hallmark is the China-US rivalry, largely insisted by Washington, and in particular the MAGA movement and the Trump administration with the US military-industrial establishment. I have Americans, classmates back in the day in grad school. I mean, they're doing honorable and respectful jobs, NGOs doing honorable things in Africa. And we also have Chinese investors, like you said, doing impactful things on the African continent. I mean, this is not a zero-sum game, but how do you look at the sentiment right now that is pitting China against America, vying for influence in Africa as if it's a zero-sum game?
Yeah, I mean, for us, our reaction, and I would say, is that we are open for business. We are open for any investors who come to business with a sustainable, viable model for us. Ghana, for example, is rich in resources, and in the past, those resources have not necessarily inured the maximum benefits to the country. We are in a new era or where we want to ensure that these resources will yield us the necessary returns and help us to create sustainable industries going forward. We have seen some models come out of the West, out of the US. We are also seeing other alternatives coming out of China. We're looking for the best kind of alternative to be able to drive our destinies forward. And so we've moved past where we had the old colonial system, where we were directed in a particular direction, to opening ourselves a bit more. And the empirical evidence has shown that as we've opened ourselves more, we've come up with a better variety of business models that seem to be working for us.
And given China's economic transformation, as the Chinese economy is pivoting away from the property sector, conventional industries, more into AI, robotics, green industry, high-tech, emphasizing self-reliance, high-end manufacturing, what do you see opportunities for Ghana, and what kind of future cooperation do you envision for our two countries going forward?
So at the moment, if you look at the structure of our economy in Ghana, a lot of the revenues we make are from the services sort of sector, then followed by the primary agri sector. Manufacturing is one of the lowest industries in the country at the moment. We believe that economic transformation lies in further developing our manufacturing sector and developing the secondary agri sector, which is the value-add sector, and smart technology in agro-processing, etc. These are areas where we see China have excelled and have built significant expertise in it, and that's why we feel a marriage or a matching with investors like that from China can only be good for the country, because it can move us in terms of where our aspirations want us to go to.
And finally, we're celebrating the Chinese New Year, the Lunar New Year, that is celebrated also in Korea, partly Japan, Southeast Asia, the Chinese community diaspora around the world, in Africa included. Can I please ask you to deliver a brief Chinese New Year message to our viewers in China and around the world?
Yeah, we're wishing all who are celebrating the New Year a wonderful year. I understand this is the year of the horse, and so there's a lot of progress and momentum that we are looking forward to in 2026. We're particularly looking forward to significant partnerships between ourselves in Ghana and China, especially with the private sector, so that by the time the year ends, we can look back to significant partnerships.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bene. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yes.
And that will do it for this edition of The Hub on CGTN. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Wang Guan in Beijing.